Explorers close to Cleopatra's tomb. Sunken port discovery brings explorers closer to Cleopatra's lost tomb. For centuries, historians and archaeologists have searched in vain for the final resting place of Cleopatra VII, the last pharaoh of Egypt and one of the most powerful, enigmatic, and seductive rulers in history. Now, a major underwater discovery near the ruins of Taposiris Magna may have brought them closer than ever. Now, let's explore this story in depth on today's AI podcast.
Back to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling, well, maybe the ultimate cold case. We're looking at the 2,000-year mystery of Cleopatra VII's missing tomb. I mean, this wasn't just any ruler. She was Egypt's very last pharaoh, defiant right to the end. And where she was buried, it's basically history's greatest vanishing act. So our sources today, they're pointing towards something really quite startling. A new clue that's got archaeologists buzzing. It's a discovery that literally sank beneath the waves. Our mission here is to unpack all the evidence around this newly found sunken port. We want to figure out, could this finally be the key, the thing that solves the puzzle of where Cleopatra and Mark Antony were buried together?
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because the absence itself speaks volumes. When someone like Cleopatra, a woman who commanded armies, who played Rome's most powerful men against each other, when she just disappears from the record after her death, that's likely not accidental. This search, it's really not just about finding remains, is it? It's about trying to understand the final strategy, the last move of a queen obsessed with controlling her own story, even beyond the grave.
That context is so important. Okay, let's quickly recap her final chapter. Cleopatra, incredibly smart ruler, right? Reigning from 51 BC to 30 BC. She had those famous alliances in Rome, first Julius Caesar, then Mark Antony. But when she and Antony lost to Octavian, who'd become Emperor Augustus in those Roman civil wars, well, their deaths mark the end. The absolute end of the Ptolemaic dynasty, that Greek line that had ruled Egypt for centuries.
Exactly. And their defeat meant that what happened to her body was suddenly a huge deal for Rome. Ancient writers, they do confirm that after they took their own lives, Cleopatra famously with the ask, according to legend, they were buried together. They died as a pair, the story goes, and they were meant to be entombed as a pair.
Okay, so if they were such massive figures, why the mystery? Why didn't Octavian, who just conquered Egypt, find the tomb, seal it, maybe even drag it back to Rome for his triumph, like they often did?
Well, that's where the narrative control comes in. Controlling the body meant controlling the story. Octavian's propaganda machine was already working overtime, painting Cleopatra as this dangerous, decadent foreign woman he'd neutralized. If he could display her body or even an effigy from the tomb, it would be the final absolute proof of his victory. The fact that the tomb was never found, it strongly suggests that Cleopatra, or maybe her loyal followers, pulled off an incredibly successful plan to hide it, precisely to deny Octavian that symbolic win. And it's worked. For 2 millennia, it's worked.
That enduring challenge, that success, is why people are still looking. Which brings us to the modern search, and specifically to Kathleen Martínez. Her dedication is just incredible. She spent nearly 20 years on this quest, sometimes even working with people like Bob Ballard, the guy who found the Titanic.
Mm-hmm. And she's focused her efforts really intensely on one specific place outside Alexandria, the old capital. It's called Taposiris Magna. And the name itself, it's packed with meaning. Taposiris Magna, it translates roughly as the great tomb of Osiris.
Osiris, the Egyptian god of death, but also resurrection. Why is that detail so critical here?
Because the site itself wasn't just some random place. It housed a major temple complex, and it was dedicated specifically to Osiris.
Yeah.
So if you're planning a burial that's meant to be symbolic, meant to kind of defy your political defeat, you choose a place with spiritual weight. Taposiris Magna wasn't just remote, it was sacred ground.
Right, and this is where Martinez's work starts getting really concrete. She didn't just stumble onto this. Back in 2022, her team found something huge, literally.
Yeah.
A massive tunnel, underground, carved deep beneath the temple ruins at Taposiris Magna. We're talking, 4,300 feet long? That's nearly 3/4 of a mile, built by hand?
Yeah, that scale alone tells you something. It wasn't just like a simple drain pipe. And crucially, inside, they found pottery, storage jars, things that date squarely to the Ptolemaic era, Cleopatra's time. So it proves this tunnel was being used, was significant, right when she was alive and ruling. That was a major piece of the puzzle, geographically speaking.
But I have to ask, a tunnel that long under a temple, why? It sounds almost more like something from, a spy movie than a religious site.
That's a great question. What was its function? Was it purely ceremonial? Was it for water? Or was it maybe for moving people or things secretly, perhaps leading to something hidden? We didn't know exactly where it ended up. But this new discovery, this sunken port, seemed to provide a pretty startling answer, or at least a direction.
Okay, let's get into that. This new discovery. The sources talk about finding a sunken port. Tell us about that site. What did they actually find down there?
Right, so this port area is underwater now in the Mediterranean. It's about 40 feet down, but, and this is key, it's only about 2 miles off the coast, directly in line with the Taposiris Magna temple complex. And what they found is pretty compelling. Things like polished stone floors, bits of broken columns, lots and lots of scattered amphorae, those big clay jars they use for shipping wine and oil. It points to a busy place. The Egyptian Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities confirmed it. They called it evidence of significant ancient marine activity. So clearly this was a real functioning port.
Okay, so we've got this enormous deep tunnel. It seems to be pointing from the temple complex out towards the sea. And now right in that direction, there's a major port, submerged just offshore. What's the connection the archaeologists are making, the immediate link?
Well, Martinez and her team see this sunken port as the other end of the system, the potential external access point for that huge tunnel. The hypothesis, basically, is that the port and the tunnel were designed together, part of a coordinated network, maybe even a secret network built for the royal family's use. Think of it like a private, secure back entrance. If you needed to get to the temple or move valuable goods or even people without going through public areas, especially if things were getting tense, like with a Roman takeover looming, this network gives you a way.
So maybe the tunnel wasn't just ceremonial or just for water. It could have been a secure supply line, an escape route. Or maybe, crucially for this search, the route used to secretly bring Cleopatra and Antony's bodies for burial. Martinez has apparently said this could be the clue that brings them much closer.
Exactly. It connects the everyday world of trade and harbors with the potentially secret world of the temple and maybe death rituals. It changes how we look at Taposiris Magna. It wasn't just an isolated temple. It might have been this fully integrated strategic complex, linking the sacred site on land with a private royal port.
But that still leaves the big question. Why Taposiris Magna at all? Why this specific place, 2 miles inland, connected to this port? Why not the royal tombs in Alexandria, where you'd expect them? And this brings us back to Martinez's core idea, doesn't it? About Cleopatra having a master plan.
Yes. And this is where you have to think less like just an archaeologist digging for objects, and more like Cleopatra herself might have thought politically, mythologically. The theory is she wasn't just hiding her body to keep it safe. She was trying to create a lasting legacy, one that sort of spiritually overcame the Roman military victory. She wanted her body, and Antony's, hidden somewhere that powerfully reflected the image she'd spent years cultivating.
And what was that specific image?
The divine one. Cleopatra very deliberately styled herself as the living goddess Isis, the great mother goddess, incredibly powerful. And Antony was positioned as her consort, Osiris. That connection, Isis and Osiris, is likely the deep mythological reason for choosing Taposiris Magna, the great tomb of Osiris.
And if you know the actual myth of Isis and Osiris, the parallels are, well, they seem incredibly deliberate, almost chilling.
They really do. Remember the story. Osiris is murdered by his jealous brother Set. His body is cut into pieces, scattered all over Egypt. But Isis, his devoted wife and sister, refuses to accept it. She travels everywhere, gathers all the pieces, puts them back together, and through her magic and devotion, she resurrects him. He becomes lord of the underworld.
Okay, so apply that to 30 BC. Cleopatra and Antony are defeated. Their power is shattered. Their lives ended by Octavian, essentially scattering their legacy.
Precisely. So, by choosing Taposiris Magna, the place associated with Osiris, Cleopatra could be trying to frame their deaths and burial within that resurrection narrative. It transforms her from just hiding bodies into a powerful spiritual and political statement. She ensures they're remembered not just as defeated Romans' enemies, but as these eternal lovers reborn in the afterlife together.
Wow. That's an extraordinary level of planning for controlling how history remembers you. It turns her burial into this final act of defiance against Rome.
Absolutely. It suggests the location wasn't chosen randomly or for convenience. It was strategic. The temple provided the divine connection, the spiritual justification, and the massive tunnel and the now discovered port. They provided the practical, logistical means to carry out the burial secretly and securely. It makes Taposiris Magna, in this view, the perfect choice for staging that final narrative-shaping act, denying Octavian the ultimate propaganda victory.
You really get a sense of the conviction behind this search after 2 decades. Martinez's comment really hits home when she says something like, she had to choose a location where she could feel safe for eternity. And she sort of throws down the gauntlet, doesn't she? Saying that to disprove her theory, you'd basically have to excavate every single inch of Taposiris Magna and find absolutely nothing.
And now, with this sunken port adding weight to the idea of the tunnel having a practical external connection, the search really does seem to have entered a new, maybe more focused phase. It reinforces that this area, far from being some forgotten temple site, might have been strategically vital right up to the end of Cleopatra's dynasty. It feels like we are closer than ever to understanding not just where she might be, but the profound why behind that specific choice.
It is genuinely amazing, isn't it? In our world where everything feels discoverable, that this huge act of concealment planned over 2,000 years ago has actually held up for so long.
It really has. Which leaves us with a pretty compelling thought to mull over as we watch this search continue. If they do find the tomb there, and if the context confirms this mythological plan, this deliberate echoing of Isis and Osiris to defy Rome's narrative, what does that ultimately tell us about power? Was Cleopatra's final act, using myth and secrecy to control her legacy beyond death, actually a more enduring, maybe even more successful victory than any battle she won or lost during her lifetime?
Okay, one question for you. Do you think modern technology like underwater exploration and 3D mapping will finally solve this mystery? Don't forget to comment it. Thanks.